turbine housings. Dude, can you not? Automatic too? Why do you even put an exhaust on that? What's up guys, welcome to BoostVlogs. Today I'm going to be covering a topic that I've had several questions on, and I actually just got it again on my Instagram, and I've struggled with it myself multiple times. Figured it'd be a good video to make, and that is removing seized bolts from old crusty turbine housings. I've seen multiple videos where people are cutting the heads off of the bolts to get the turbine housing off. I really see that as like a last final resort. I'm going to show you some pro tips on how to get those bolts out, and hopefully it helps someone. Let's get into this. The bolts I'm talking about are these here, the ones that hold the turbine housing to the CHRA. Most Garretts have 6 bolts. A lot of the China turbos I've seen have 4 bolts, which will make your life a little bit easier. But if it's a turbo that's come off of a 20-year-old engine, these things can be really stuck in there. One product that's awesome to use is this PB Blaster. Works way better than WD-40 or anything like that. If your bolts are really stuck, spray this on there, let the turbo sit for, a day, and come back to it later. This stuff works really well. I typically work on the ground. It's a little bit easier to use my weight for leverage when you're trying to get these super tight bolts off. I like to prop the turbo up on a piece of wood so I'm not scratching up the gasket surface. Next thing you want to do is find the right size wrench to go into the bolts. In my case it's a 1/2 inch, and you want to use the box end wherever possible because the open end can actually expand and damage the bolt if you put a lot of torque on it. A 6-point box end is much better than a 12-point because it can handle a lot more torque without damaging the bolt, but a lot of times you need the 12-point because you're getting into a tight space and you don't really have room to turn the wrench. Next thing I do is put a crescent wrench onto the turbine housing just like this. If you're worried about damaging or scratching it, you can put a rag over the crescent wrench. I'm not really too worried about it here. So this is the setup that you're left with, and the first thing I usually try is I'll just hold onto the crescent wrench and I'll use the box end from another wrench on the open end of the existing one and just give it a pull. A lot of times that will be enough to break the torque on these bolts. I'm aware that that probably looked really easy because these bolts are not seized, so I can't really exaggerate and pretend like I'm struggling, but you can get a ton of torque with that method. Now if you're still having problems, another thing you can do, hold this torque wrench. You can even hold it with your legs so you can kind of keep the turbo stable and stuff like that. Take your big hammer and just tap this. A lot of times I'll hold this on with my finger so I know the wrench is not slipping off. You can damage the bolt that way. You might have to hit it a lot harder than that, but you get the point. That can also put some impact into the bolt, which will help get it free. Some of the bolts, like the one right next to the turbo drain, you're not going to be able to get your box end on, and that's where it can start getting really difficult. You'll have to use the open end of the wrench like this and use the hammer method, and that's where you can start rounding off the bolt. So you just want to be really careful and make sure the wrench is all the way on the bolt, and also use the thickest wrench that you can so it'll have a minimal amount of flex. Sometimes if the CHRA is clocked just perfect, it'll be really close to being able to get the box end of the wrench on here, but it won't quite fit. That's where I took one of my box end wrenches and I actually ground it down to be skinnier. Boom, can fit on there just like that. Now you can have the confidence of using the box end to get that bolt loose. I don't really recommend grinding it down if it's your only wrench, but if you have a spare, you can grind it down and make your own tool like that. It can be very helpful. After you get all the turbine bolts loose, the turbine housing can actually still be pretty stuck on the CHRA. The first thing you want to do is just take a rubber or wood mallet, something that won't damage the metal, and just hit it like this. I actually do still have the bolts in, so mine's not going to come off. I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. Yeah, just like smack like this, on all sides. And if that still doesn't get it loose, get a pry bar in between the fitting and the turbine housing, and you can kind of ease it off. Now be really careful doing this because you can damage the fitting, so just use common sense and don't go crazy and pry on it. What I actually did with my other turbo where it was super stuck is I bolted it to the turbo manifold on the engine, so it was just rock solid, and then I just took a pry bar and it didn't take too much force, and I was just able to easily go to each fitting and work the turbine housing off. Alright guys, well that's all I got for you this time. Don't forget to drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to both channels for more Miata content. I'll see you in the next one.